the backbone of our business, and if you were to ask anybody that's an operator in this room, is the general manager. The general manager and potentially the district manager are the two most important positions that we hire.
Join us as today's host, Anthony Zoller, interviews restaurant industry titan Jim Balis. From Dishwasher to CEO, Jim shares powerful insights on building teams, retaining talent, and mastering guest experience.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Prosper Brief. We're here at the Prosper Forum. I'm fortunate to sit down with Jim Balis and take some time out of the forum to sit down and talk. Jim, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your current company?
Sure. Lifelong restaurant operator. Started in the business when I was 13 years old. Probably lied about my age to get the job. Didn't know that I was a little bit too young to work there. I was a dishwasher in an Italian restaurant in New York. Went on to work just about every job in the restaurant. I've been a server, I've been a dishwasher, a busser, general manager, district manager, regional manager, and I've been the CEO of about 15 different restaurant companies.
Wow.
Started an advisory group, boutique advisory group in the restaurant space back in the day, and eventually joined Capital Spring. Capital Spring is a restaurant-focused investment company. We do a lot of private equity-like investing in the restaurant space. Currently have about 4,000 restaurants in our portfolio across a number of different brands. Some of them are franchisees, some are franchisors, some are independent concepts. I've been the CEO of one of our investments, which is called Sizzling Platter, for about 5 years. I recently stepped down from that role last week. But that's an 800-unit, multi-branded franchisee business. That's
amazing. So when you got your job as 13, what pushed you to get the job? Did you want to do it? Was it economics driving that? How did that play out?
It was actually a friend of my family's, and we loved the restaurant. And I said, I'd love to come work with you one summer. And the owner, a lady from Italy, said, sure, I'd love to have you work for me. So yeah, I went there, and what was interesting about it is she was very true to form with Italian food. So a lot of the steaks were undercooked because they don't cook things as thoroughly there as they do here. Well done, she would be insulted.
Okay.
Medium rare was like pushing the limits. And so a lot of people would send the food back. And I used to just carve around the steaks and eat because I was always so hungry, 13-year-old old. And it was disgusting how much food that made it to the dishwasher that I would actually eat. And that I'm still here today. But it was a great job. And I held several restaurant jobs. Really grew up within operations.
Yeah. No, and that's a common theme here at the forum that we're hearing from a lot of executives. Well, everybody in the industry. It's amazing how many people started out like the dishwasher, server, and how that experience really helps you grow into an executive in the industry. That's one takeaway. The other takeaway too, I'm talking to a lot of professors in the industry about the hospitality, and you say hospitality, everybody just thinks back of the house or server. That's it for a career. But you're a prime example. All the different avenues that are out there for people to get into, really the sky's the limit in this industry. So
yeah. Absolutely. It is very interesting too. People use the term hospitality, and what really I try to focus on, or I think leans into hospitality as a broader subject, is really the guest experience. And the guest experience is not just about, how we're greeting the guests when they walk in the door. It's how the food looks when it's presented to them, whether it's off-premise or whether it's, the order being accurate is an incredibly important, the most common complaint for third-party delivery right now is guest experience, order accuracy. So, that's part of the guest experience too. And I think, as we focus more and more on delivering on that guest experience, because that's what really differentiates the winners from the losers in a lot of ways. And I think it's a very important element, and something, we just, at Sizzling Platter, we just rewrote our mission statement. And a lot of the old mission statements were around, being great restaurant operators. Now it's very different. Ours starts with the team member. Our focus is on the team member. Then it goes to the guest, and then it goes to the brands we're in, and then profitability is actually last.
Okay.
And then it's a lot about how you live that mission statement. And, we've done a lot of things now with employee sentiment surveys and a lot of other things. And I think we're going to talk about some of the stuff in a second, around that new mission of delivering on our team members and focusing on them and our guest experience.
Yeah. No, and, the culture, everybody talks about culture. It's easy to talk about, very hard to execute on. But I'm seeing a lot businesses, even outside of the hospitality industry, realizing it starts with your core team, your employees. And once you've got that solidified and everybody's happy, that's going to just produce happy customers. Happy customers going to produce the revenue. And you don't think about the revenue first, you think about your core team first, and that follows. So I wanted to jump into that theme with you today and talk about your thoughts on recruiting. How do you find good talent? How do you find that core team? Where do you start? And let's walk through that process. So like just recruiting and acquiring good people to come work with you. How do you do that?
Look, what I would say is the backbone of our business, and if you were to ask anybody that's an operator in this room, is the general manager. The general manager and potentially the district manager are the two most important positions that we hire. If we get those right, our chances of success are a magnitude higher than they are if we don't. Okay. And so, we have invested an enormous amount of human capital and financial capital in trying to identify, recruit, and retain the best general managers that we possibly can. Okay. And, like I said, it's just so important to the core of our business, right? I mean, they're there every day. They're working extra hours. They're the stewards of that business at the end of the day. So, it starts with recruiting, right? And so, we try to present our job postings in a way that seems welcoming, it's join our family. It's be part of a great culture. It's have a life outside of, just your work. We had a big summit at our company in December, end of year celebration, invited our whole team, there, 1,000 people there. And I presented on just the balance of being happy and doing your job. And there is a way to balance both. And it's very important to the culture of our business. And so I think as you post those positions, presenting some of those kind of keyword touch points so that when somebody's reading it, that's a potential hourly employee or manager, they're saying, I'm interested, I'm going to click on this, right? Yeah. And then it's some of the question process that will weed out people that may not be self-starters, may not be, willing to follow the rules because, safety and sanitation, there's certain rules that just have to be followed in a restaurant, right? And then the real key is once you have somebody good, it's then figuring out how to retain them. Yeah. And, that's where we've probably invested the most time. We put a lot of effort into their first day. Surprisingly, a lot of what we hear is, I went to work for this company, I showed up, they didn't have my uniform, they forgot I was starting that day, they didn't know my name.
Here's the handbook, sign that, right. And it's all this boring stuff. Yeah.
That's exactly right. So, we've invested pretty heavily in that first day. And we actually now, on top of that, we have a television screen, 40-inch screen in the back of the house that has a loop of video. And part of it is like, if there's, an LTO that's happening, a reminder on how to make it or to sell it or what it is, or some of it is positive feedback that we've received about that restaurant. We like to put it on there, maybe some social media posts that were positive, maybe some negative ones too, so we can correct those. But then for the first time employee, we'll put their face up there. We might talk about where they came from, maybe their favorite sports team, are they a college football fan, a hobby, and then everybody can welcome them. And then we do, if it's their 1 month anniversary and if it's their 1 year anniversary, we celebrate those. And then, some more things that we've really tried to do to help create the culture around it is we also do employee sentiment. So clock in, clock out. We're getting feedback from them. How was your first day? how'd you feel today? If it's your 50th day or 60th day,
Okay.
we try to get different types of feedback, and then we make it a big point to celebrate promotions. If you were to go on LinkedIn, you'll see constant celebrations of promotions, because how many times in people's lives do they actually get promoted? Not that many times. So we make it a point to give them a gift card, go out and celebrate with,
Nice.
your family members. And I think a lot of that stuff helps them feel like they're more part of a team and a family. And I think that helps with the retention.
That's great. That's great. You mentioned something earlier too. I want to circle back around with about the job descriptions. A lot of people will just brush off the job description they drafted years ago. It's like, oh, that position's open now. Let's just rerun this. But like the key words that you use in that and how to do that. I mean, do you have any hints or any best practices on that you look at when you're drafting that? And it's such a, I think, often overlooked. And I know I've been guilty of that too. You're busy. I got to fill this position. Like, just use that job description we've always had.
Yeah. It's important to make it a lot more emotional right now than descriptive, if that makes sense.
Okay.
You want the person, once they click on it and start following through, you've won the first battle, so to speak, right? And so we try to use a lot of words that are much more, emotionally engaging than, here's what's expected of you. Here are the job responsibilities. Here's the title of the position. And even the title, in some cases, we've changed.
Yeah.
So instead of saying you're front of the house cashier, we've tested host, salesperson. We've tried some other things, and we're still kind of working through to see what's best received. And then I also cheated a little bit. I found the guy who heads up restaurant ads for Indeed.
Okay.
And I called him up and I said, can you do some research for me? I want to know when you get the most hits for kitchen hires, front of the house hires, server hires, and manager hires.
Okay.
And, he came back with certain days of week, certain times of day are the best times to put a posting out so it's fresh and on top when you're getting the most hits from those types of team members.
Yeah, it's like social media posting certain days and times are better. So.
Exactly.
And I wanted to talk about that too with the technology, with recruiting, using Indeed, a lot of online. Any other avenues, or do you using them all to recruit and fill positions, or what do you look for on that?
So, there are, and I think there are a few of the technologies here. I think WorkStream is here. It's a great solution. They have a talent acquisition program using a chatbot AI. Okay. There's Harry, which is another platform. There's Paradox, so there's a number of platforms that will go out to, Indeed, Glassdoor, all of the websites, ZipRecruiter, and they'll try to keep the postings active for you.
Yep.
But, you still have to supply them with, what is it going to say? What are the questions you're going to ask? Yep. And I think that's where, you sort of create the win, so to speak, if you can get those right.
Yep, that's great. No, you really win. I mean, and again, it's overlooked, but you really win at that level. And if you're not getting the attention of the right people, like the interviews, how well you interview, how well you retain people, that's not worth if you're not getting the right people in the door.
That's exactly right. And we added a kind of a tagline to the end of our mission statement that just says we care about each other. And I think, a lot of times, when I go visit the restaurants, and granted, I'm the CEO, so everybody's usually nervous. The first thing I do is I ask personal questions about them, not like, do you have any health issues, right? But, it's normally like, how are you doing? Do you have a dog? Do you have kids? Yeah. What do you do for fun when you're not here? And get to know those people and really care about them, I find. And I really try to make a point to repeat their name so I remember it. And I think the more you care about your team members and show that you legitimately care about them personally, the more they feel that you care and they feel like they're part of something. And it's so important. I mean, I think it ties well into the Accelerate program. We have one of our Jamba team members here, and, what she's done for our business and how she's grown up within the organization. And what she's achieved, and I'm not talking about financially, she's built a great team around herself, and I was talking to her last night, and she's so happy to be here, how much she's learned, and it's a way of giving back and she's going to go back to her restaurants and share information that she's received here. It's this wonderful cycle that you guys have created.
That's awesome. You're involved in doing that, supporting the accelerator program. And it's so critical too, I think, for them to be involved here, meeting other people, seeing, and I think from their perspective too, and I've struggled with this, like getting the idea, like you can take the next step. You could be a leader in the industry, CEO, all of that. So that's good. It's a good reminder for everybody in the program. And that's where I like it going. And the network they're building around each other too.
Yeah, it's incredible. And last night, while we were talking, there were other members of the accelerator program, and just hearing the impact it's had on them to be here with other accelerators, what they've learned, interacting with some of the senior executive teams that, and it's interesting. Some of the common words I've heard is, it's incredible that I met this so-and-so person that's the CEO, and, she was so humble, or, he was so approachable. And, it
is amazing at the forum how approachable everybody is, and friendly, how helpful everybody is too. So that's great.
It really is a great, very intimate setting, and I think that fosters a different versus other conferences that that are enormous and overwhelming. This is a much more intimate setting, and it's much easier to have those conversations.
Cool. I'm glad you're liking it. And, So getting back to the employees, the retention of the employees, any resources that you've turned to? And I've been asking people about like any books that you've read that are key for this, or do you listen to any podcasts? How are you continually learning about this as well?
Yeah, I mean, I've read most of the restaurant books at this point in time. I think the first one I read was Anthony Bourdain's. Then I went to Danny Myers, and then Jim Sullivan, and the leadership books are probably the most important. There's the EOS platform that I like a lot too, that a lot of people follow. For me, because I'm constantly attending conferences, I'm getting exposed to the latest technologies. You're listening to fantastic content from the smartest people in our industry. And then on top of it, as an investment firm, because we invest in services and technology, we're constantly being sent, hey, here's the next latest of this, so we're seeing a lot. And so I feel like I'm pretty up to speed. I will say, one sort of, it's not necessarily a resource to fall back on, but a technology that's worked very well for us. And it's not the name of the technology, because I think there are some companies that do it. We do it ourselves. But having that screen in the back of the house has really been a huge culture builder, where we're talking about our employees celebrating certain things that happen, their birthdays, different celebrations and identifiers. That's been very special, and I didn't realize the impact it would have. And I've been very surprised about that.
It sounds so simple too.
Exactly.
It's
TV just a
screen.
loop. What you have to be careful about when we first did it, anything they posted about the restaurant, we put on the loop. One girl was in a shower. We realized we should probably filter what goes on there. So now it goes to a different place first. They filter it, and then it goes in the loop. So you do have to be careful about what goes on the loop. But it's been very successful and surprising.
That's great. Yeah. Any other thoughts before we wrap it up here on the life cycle of the employee, for the recruiting, retention? Any closing thoughts on that?
Do not lose good general managers. So, I think it's very important, as I said, the caring piece is very important. So when you do have really good general managers, it's important that you get out there, not just your district managers, but everybody else. Spend an hour with them. It's so important. Understand what their challenges are, what they like doing. A big piece of the managerial program is understanding what they want out of life. And, is this something where, hey, I'm going to be a general manager for a year, I'm going through college, but I really want to be an engineer. That's great, understanding that. And, you can sort of adapt their workplace environment and responsibilities around that. Or this is my career, and I want to be a district manager and a regional manager. And then, you're going to treat them differently from a training perspective and other perspectives. So I think really spending the time with them to get to know them, care about them, understand them is a huge piece of the retention.
Key. But with that said, I'd keep an open mind too. Once they're in the industry, they might like it and change. I've heard a lot of that happening too. Had a lot of friends actually start as a server and get into the hospitality industry and don't leave. Thought they were going to go some route, medical school or something,
right.
but like the industry. So, and to my point earlier too, there's so many different opportunities. It's not just, like from your perspective, being an investor, in these concepts and everything too, not just running a restaurant, running the back of the house or working in a restaurant. There's a lot of different aspects, and this human resource aspect of it too, with restaurants being, I think it's the largest employer out in the U.S. other than the U.S. government.
Correct. It's the second largest employer in the United States.
So, the human resource aspect, the human aspect of this is so critical, and it's so important to get right in our industry. So I really appreciate your insights on it today.
Absolutely.
And, so if anybody's interested in getting a hold of you, is there a good website for them to go to? Or
the best one is capitalspring.com. Capital spelled with A-L, not O-L. Probably stating the obvious there. But Capital Spring, singular. A lot of people call us Capital Springs, but it's capitalspringsingular.com. I'm jbaylis at capitalspring.com. I'm on the website. That's probably the best way to get a hold of me. I'll finish it with a joke.
Okay.
So a mushroom walks into a bar. Bartender says, "I'm sorry, I can't serve you." He said, "What do you mean? I'm a fun guy." There. That's a joke.
That'd be great. Well, thank you, Jim, so much for
Thanks,
taking
Anthony.
some time to sit down with us, and wish you the best rest of the conference.
Appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this insightful interview with Jim Balis. If you loved this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more incredible conversations with industry leaders. See you next time here on The Prosper Brief.